As politicians around the world scramble to fight climate change in the name of protecting their people, politicians around the world scramble to keep the lights on in the name of protecting their people. The problem? Well, the two goals are not quite, but pretty nearly mutually exclusive. Robert Bryce, one of the world's leading experts on the challenges of providing adequate energy, especially in the form of electricity, joins us tonight on From the Stacks to discuss the surprising comeback of coal as a crucial source of the world's energy and the bullying tactics of a major wind energy company in a picturesque Iowa county. Stay with us to find out why wind's not ready for prime time, but coal is, and why that's important to you and especially to the poor living in developing nations. Welcome to From the Stacks. And as we always do every month, the Cornwall Alliance offers a free educational resource as our way of saying thank you when you make a donation of literally any size. This month, our resource is The Utter Inadequacy of Solar Power to a Modern Economy. More about that later. We're going to be in a bit of a hurry this evening because Robert needs to get off by half an hour from now, and so we'll tell you more about this at about another 30 minutes. Welcome, Robert. And as you have guests do on your own podcast, which, by the way, is one of my favorites, the Power Hungry podcast, please introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Cal. Thanks for inviting me back. I don't think I've ever been invited back anywhere, so to be invited back on your show is is great. So glad to be with you. Who am I? I thought about this. I do have my guests introduce themselves, and I've thought about it since then. Well, first, I'm a dad. I've got three. My wife Lauren and I have three great kids, and I'm a husband. And Lauren and I have been married 36 years this year. So those are my most important things. I'm also an author, journalist, film producer, podcaster. I've written six books, and I report on. I consider myself a reporter. I report on the energy and power businesses, and I have great fun with it. Never had a real job. I've just been a reporter my whole life. So that's me.
Well, yeah, and I've been a reporter in the past too. My father was a journalist all his life, and been a reporter, an editor, a publisher, and so I know the life a little bit. Robert has not only written great books like Power Hungry and A Question of Power, Electricity and the Wealth of Nations, but he's also produced an outstanding documentary, Juice, How Electricity, yeah, there's one of the books there, How Electricity Explains the World. And he hosts one of my favorite podcasts, the Power Hungry podcast. So let's jump right in because his time is limited.
Sure.
Robert, on January 16, you published in The Hill an article titled, As Coal Use Surges, America Finds It's Hard to Unplug from Carbon. You reported that American coal consumption had risen by 17% over the previous year, proving that coal remains an essential fuel for electricity producers, both here in the US and around the world, and that the Biden administration's pledge to decarbonize the electric grid by 2035 is little more than wishful thinking. Now, you wrote that before Russia you invaded Ukraine.
Sure.
How has the war affected global demand for coal?
Well, the coal market has been on a hot streak. I mean, it's cooled off to some degree in the last week or two, but prices at the Newcastle benchmark, which is the Australian port that ships a lot of coal, waterborne coal, hit over $400 a ton. And when I wrote that piece in January, I think it was $200 a ton. So huge increases, spikes in coal demand, and limitations on coal deliverability because of heavy rains in some countries, flooding, and then labor shortages, lack of rail infrastructure. And now with the war, this has even increased further. So the latest update, well, just a couple of quick points. Last year in the U.S., coal demand went up 17%. Coal consumption, rather, went up
Mm-hmm.
17%. Now, coal has
Yeah.
been on a downward trend in the U.S. for a long time, but to see that kind of a spike was a clear indicator of the arbitrage electric generators are making between the price of coal and the price of natural gas, which has gone up
Yeah.
dramatically. So that's the other reason why coal demand is going up. And final point on this, just for the moment, is China just a few weeks ago said they will increase their coal production by 300 million tons within the next year or so. They're going to add an amount of coal production that is equal to half of all U.S. coal production they're planning to do within a year. So they're going to go from 4 billion to 4.3 billion. This, coal demand is insatiable right now globally.
Yeah. In 2021, natural gas accounted for about 38% of American electricity generation, and coal about 22%. And that was before natural gas essentially doubled in price. So,
Right.
what does that portend for the electric generation mix for the rest of this year and probably the next few years at least?
Well, we're seeing is this, and I think right now they should call a moratorium on closing closing coal plants in the U.S. We need to call time out here because we're losing a valuable baseload resource that is needed for
Mhm.
grid stability, and yet this is happening
Absolutely.
all across the country. But we also need it for affordability. What we're seeing in New York with the closure of Indian Point, the insanely criminal closure, premature closure of the Indian Point nuclear plant, has resulted in a spike in natural
Yeah.
gas consumption for production in New York City and electric rates in New York and Con Ed. Some Con Ed customers seeing their rates go up 50%. So, I mean, these are
Hmm.
massive increases. So, we have more concerns here than just climate change. We have to be clear about what is happening to the working class. And
Yeah.
in California, New York, we're seeing massive increases in electricity costs because we're becoming too dependent on a very few fuels and closing our nuclear plants. So it's we're at a
Yeah.
we're weakening the grid in America, Cal, and it's a dangerous situation.
It sure was. We saw that with Texas last year and the sudden, very, very cold snap there. And we've seen it in various other
Yeah,
ways. And not just too few different sources, but really uh, inadequate sources, wind and solar, of course, being so intermittent. But you
right.
ended that article back in January by writing, if policymakers are serious about decarbonizing the electric grid, they need to get serious about nuclear energy and they need to do so now. Well, what do you see as the realistic prospects for expanding nuclear energy in America, granted the fears generated by
Yeah.
the green movement?
Well, Cal, I want to be optimistic, but in fact, I was doing a long interview for my podcast today with Brett Kugelmass, and we were talking about what is
Hmm.
happening. That the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has become the anti-nuclear regulatory commission in the United States. I just don't see a path to commercialization of alternate technology reactors in the U.S. in anything
Hmm.
like the near term. I just don't think it's going to happen because of this bureaucratic inertia. And remember, Joe Biden, President Biden, and I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm disgusted, but in his State of the Union address, Cal, he didn't mention the word nuclear energy one time. This
Yeah.
is an
Yeah.
anti-nuclear administration. Let's face it. They have a bunch of ideologues who are, they
It-
don't want to see nuclear succeed, and this is the. It's unfortunate. We hear some,
Is,
happy talk from the administration, but they
yeah.
haven't even filled out the 5-member commission at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This is not a priority.
Yeah. Is there anything that just ordinary citizens can do to, to try to help politicians along the path to nuclear sanity?
Well, I could say write your congressman. I think that it's kind of hackneyed, but I think that that's possible. I think that you also need to talk to your friends and make clear where you stand on it and
Mhm.
be a forceful
Yeah.
advocate. But there is no route. And to me, the issue of nuclear, Cal, yes, is climate change a concern? Yes, but it's not our only concern. But the other attributes of
Right.
nuclear, besides the climate benefits, are the land sparing, about saving the environment, about not killing birds
Yeah.
and bats. And you saw just today the news about Next Era Energy being fined by the federal government for violations of migratory
Hmm.
bird and golden eagle and bald eagle protection acts. These are serious issues with our environment. We need compact, power dense sources of energy, and wind and solar ain't it.
They're about as far opposite as you can get. Well, proponents of renewable energy, wind and solar especially, confidently assert that we don't need coal or even natural gas. We can get all the electricity we need from
Oh,
wind and
it's
solar,
fantasy,
which
Cal.
together
It's
generated
easily
about 12% of our electricity in
Yeah, but
2021.
it's easily
Uh,
dismissed. I mean, here's the reality. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have my own
Go
podcast
right
I host
ahead.
all the time. But this
Sure.
issue that we can do it with renewables, then the endless chant, it's cheaper. Well, let's look at what is actually happening on the ground. which is all across the country. NBC News carried a story last March 8th, that they reported there were 40 communities across the country who had rejected or restricted solar projects just since the beginning of last year. My own count puts the number of rejection or restrictions of wind energy at over 325 since
Hmm.
2015. These projects are being rejected all across the country.
Yeah.
Just Saturday in Lovell, Maine, they had a town referendum. All of the residents, not all of them went, but they voted 80% to 20% to reject a big solar project
Hmm.
in their town. It's happening all across the country, in New York,
Yeah.
in Nevada, in Montana, in Pennsylvania, in New York. I can give you chapter and verse on this, but it's just this. It's a land rush. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a land grab by big
Yeah.
business in rural America, and it's happening in Madison County, Iowa, where it's one of the most interesting and controversial wind developments in the country, being pushed by Warren Buffett's subsidiary.
Yeah, and we're actually going to get to that a little bit. One obstacle to expanding wind power is growing public opposition to locating wind farms. No, I call them factories because on farms, you grow crops and raise animals. But locating wind factories near people's homes or where they obscure beautiful vistas. Week before last in Forbes, you published an update on the wind turbines of Madison County. Mid American Energy prevails in lawsuit, may add 30 more turbines. Well, lots of people, of course, are familiar with picturesque Madison County because of the 1995 box office hit, The Bridges of Madison County, starring Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep. You reported that Mid American Energy, a wind company, sued Madison County, and the suit was eventually settled with a go ahead for placing 30 more turbines there. What
Right.
led to the lawsuit and its settlement?
Well, it's interesting. I'll report on the email I got from Mid American just on Friday. I emailed them 3 times to ask them about this lawsuit and the tax credits they're planning to get. They claimed that they are not trying to intimidate the county. They said it was unequivocally false that they were trying to intimidate the county. Well, so I emailed them back and emailed them yesterday. I haven't heard back. I said, well, there's really just one question here, which is why is the company trying to force the county to accept wind turbines it clearly doesn't want? In 2020, on an anti-wind platform, 2 out of the 3 board supervisors in the county, they passed an ordinance prohibiting new wind turbines in the county. In 2018, Mid-American got a variance to an ordinance that allowed them to build turbines higher than was originally allowed, but they only got a variance. They never got a permit to build, but they sued the county
Yeah,
anyway. I mean, this is
yeah.
the ultimate example of big business trying to steamroll small town America. And it
Well,
won't,
and
this is
what
the
are
part
they
that chaps my
making?
hide, Cal. I'll just finish.
Yeah.
They won't
Okay.
report on this in the New York Times. They won't
Yeah.
report on it in the Washington Post, National Public Radio, hopeless. They won't
And
report on
what
these
is
issues because they don't care about rural America.
right? And what is Mid American going to make per turbine? Not in
Right.
earned income from electricity sold to the grid, but in tax
And tax
credits.
credits. Well, I calculated $80 million. Now, the company did not dispute my calculations on that. And I was just using their own numbers and doing some very simple algebra, which is the only kind I can do.
Yeah.
But this is not the first time, Cal, that this has happened. I mean,
Yeah.
what has happened? The reality is that these environmental groups, and I will name them Sierra Club, Natural Resource Defense Council, all 350.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll just put renewables out there, in flyover country. They will not acknowledge the land use conflicts that are already hindering or, in fact, stopping the growth of wind and solar projects because they
Hmm.
take so much land. And you're right, I don't
Yeah.
call them farms, they're projects.
Yeah. Right. Well, Warren Buffett, of course, said
Famously said,
roughly there
yes.
is no better reason to build wind turbines than tax credits that we get from them. Otherwise, they make no
Right,
sense. And
right.
that's the deal. It's all about the money that comes from taxpayers through tax credits and subsidies to these companies. It's not about the energy produced. It's not about getting cheap, affordable, reliable electricity to people. It's all about big companies making big money. Well,
Well,
you pointed
this is
out,
not just and it's not just any company. Cal, if I can finish there,
yeah,
this is a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, which is a company that has 775. It has a market capitalization, a total value $775 billion. This is one
hmm
of the biggest companies
yeah,
in the world, and
Yeah.
they have taken it upon themselves to sue one of the most famous counties in America
Yeah.
to force the county to take wind turbines it doesn't want. And yet they're
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we're not trying to intimidate them." That's clearly
Yeah.
what happened here. And I haven't written about this, but the
Yeah.
county supervisor, Diane Fitch, who's been on the podcast, is sent me an email, said that the lawsuit was going to bankrupt the county and she wasn't going to allow that. Well, if that's not
Yeah.
intimidation, I don't know what is. But they didn't offer
Yeah.
alternative verbs, so I wrote the story. Send me the verb you prefer. Bully.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You actually have, is it a whole website or is it just a part of your own, robertbryce.com website where you are keeping a running tally of all the
Yeah.
different places where people have turned down wind and solar projects,
And
and
it's
you're
woefully
explaining
outdated
why they're doing
and
that. Yeah.
right. And you sent
But
me an email. I
where
need to
can
give the
people
shout
go for
out.
this?
Thank you. Yeah, it's the on my website, robertbryce.com. You'll find right at the top the Renewable Rejection Database. It's a database that I've been collecting on my own time, on my own dime since 2015, documenting the number of rejections of wind energy that have
Yeah.
happened all across the country. And the big solar and big wind have never challenged my numbers. They won't challenge this
Yeah.
data. They don't want to talk about it. They want to act like this, this resistance doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But I want to just John Nichols is a friend of David Legate's, and he's forwarded this
Yeah.
email about Freeport Energy, which is a big issue in Delaware, and they are working out. Their website is solarpollution.com.
Hmm.
Which I gather is one of the many local groups, rural groups in rural America on Facebook. You can find them on Facebook, that famous source
Yep.
of good information for people organizing about these kinds of projects in Iowa, all across the country.
Yeah. You wrote a wonderful paper, Not in Our Backyard, all about
Right,
the ways that various local groups of people are cooperating together to keep wind and solar projects from being built near them.
right, right.
Tell us a little bit about that. What are the most the most effective methods that they're using? That
Well, let
oh,
me
by
be
the way,
clear about
before you
something.
start, that is
Sure.
available. That is available through Cornwall Alliance's online store, cornwallalliance.org/shop. Not in our backyard is available right there. You can order it online, and I think many people will find that very useful. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, one of the things, Cal, I was going to say was that some of this reporting that's being done by these big media outlets here in the U.S. Are pointing to, although these rural groups are using Facebook to organize, and they're sharing things that might not be true about the solar business and making like this is some kind of big conspiracy, or implying that they're funded by the hydrocarbon sector, or that they're just the underlying tone of a lot of this is just they're just a bunch of dumb hicks. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating here, that these people just don't know what's
Yeah,
good for them, and they don't know that their land value is going to go down in value because, this one study from Lawrence Berkeley Labs by this one guy says it doesn't matter, when numerous other studies done all over the world show that it reduces property values. It's
yeah,
clear. And yet they
yeah,
deny these facts on the face of it. So I've documented this through the Renewable Rejection Database, where over 325 wind rejections, dozens of solar rejections. It's hopelessly out of date. I need to put more time into it, but I'm the only one working on it. And the big media outlets will not report on this. They won't
yeah,
report on it.
yeah, yeah. Robert, I used to drive a truck through the lower desert of California as my job, fresh out of college. And there's a place on I-10 where, as you're headed westbound, you're coming uh, toward San Bernardino and Riverside and out of Palm Springs. You come through
Right.
this pass and you have beautiful Mount San Gorgonio on your right to the north and beautiful Mount San Jacinto on your left to the south. They're both snow capped until late summer. It's just an amazing thing. And here you are down in the desert, and you top this one rise and first see that vista. It was beautiful for me every day that I drove it as a truck driver out there. And about 8 years ago, I drove that again with my wife. We topped that rise, and I simultaneously cursed and cried because in front of me was this vast field of wind turbines that had
Yeah.
destroyed the beauty of that place. And to me, Robert, I don't know how anybody who considers himself an environmentalist can think that these things are good for the environment. Whatever happened to the value of beauty among environmentalists?
Cal, I sometimes despair on this. I honestly do, because this is the
Hmm.
idea, the cynicism, the catastrophism around climatism is so extreme that no cost is too high. Oh, we have to burn down the village in order to save it. We have to, oh, these birds being killed, these eagles being killed, these bats being killed. Oh, well, the climate change is a bigger danger. Well, they're getting whacked now.
Yeah.
And there's just this, the
Yeah.
reason here has just been turned on its head. And I'm a bird watcher, proudly so, for more than 30 years.
I
And I find this
I
to be
see it in every one
abhorrent.
of your emails. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get torqued up about this, Cal, because I care and because I spend a lot of time in rural America, and people
Hmm.
contact me all the time. I won't say every day,
Yeah.
at least 2 or 3 times a week, saying, "Hey, can you look at this?" or "Can you help me or point me to something?" And I do as much as I
Yeah.
can, but I can't get to everyone, and I can't document every
Yeah.
one of these, what they are, outrages with
Yeah.
these,
Yeah.
the climate change carpetbaggers, and that's the right term for them.
Yeah. Tell us, we've got just a few minutes before you need to be off. Tell us just a bit about your documentary Juice: How Electricity
Sure.
Explains the World. How that came about. What's been its reception? How are people responding to that? Watched it and loved it several times, actually.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I'm proud of the film. I brag about it. I tell you, it's the best film on electricity you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And I follow that up by saying no one's ever accused me of being humble. Well, I'm proud of the film. We went all over the world: India, Iceland, Lebanon, Puerto Rico, Colorado, New York. We recently were filming again because we're working on another project in Louisiana and in New Orleans after
Nepal, I think,
Hurricane
too,
Ida.
right?
No, we didn't go there.
Nepal?
We
Or
had some footage from Ghana, but
okay.
in any case, it's available on all the major streaming platforms. It's called Juice: How Electricity Explains the World. It's been
Hmm.
out right about 2 years. You can find it on all the streaming platforms. It's free on Roku channel. You can check it out there,
Yep.
or you can look on our website, juicethemovie.com.
Yeah, right. It is truly wonderful. Well, Robert, I think the first book of yours that got me, that alerted me to you and your work was Power Hungry, which came out, what, in about 2008 or something like that? Is that right? Um,
2010. Now it's 12 years ago.
or 2010, yeah. Um, that has been followed up by several other really excellent books of yours. I just want to commend you for your work. Um, I know what it's like to write a book. It's tough. It's a lot of hard work,
It's
and
painful.
well,
It's painful.
it is. H.L. Mencken, of course, the great journalist, early 20th century. H.L. Mencken said, "Writing is easy. You just pull up to your keyboard and open a vein. You
Right.
just
Yeah.
you bleed. It's tough
Right.
stuff." But appreciate again your coming on the program with us tonight, and would encourage all of our viewers to get and read Robert's books. They're all available on Amazon.com and from various other sources. And surely you sell them through your own website, don't you? RobertBryce.com.
Actually, I don't. I don't handle merch. I
Ah,
don't have any merch. I
ah,
don't have. I am ordering some
okay.
stickers, some Power Hungry podcast stickers. So I will
Okay.
soon have some of those. But
All right.
no, I don't handle the merch. You can find it on where all
All
fine
right.
books are sold, I think.
Well, what would be some closing words that you have for our viewers about just what they need to understand and what they need
Sure.
to do to preserve access to the abundant, affordable, reliable, scalable, dispatchable, these terms that renewable advocates just don't think about. Yeah,
Affordable, reliable,
energy.
resilient. Yes, all these things that we
Yeah,
want. Well,
yeah.
I would encourage, I guess, well, I'm going to toot my own horn. I did a 10-minute video a few months ago about power density, and you can find it on my website,
Hmm.
my YouTube channel. Robert Bryce TV on YouTube. But learn what the industry is about. Learn the metrics about energy and power. And I think
Hmm.
if I would tell you one thing, understand power density and why it matters. Small footprints
Absolutely.
matter. The problem with renewables isn't that well, there may be this is no fuel, but you by having low power density, you have to put other things in. The lower the power density, the higher the resource intensity. And we care about
Hmm.
resources. We care about land, view sheds, neodymium, iron, steel, all the concrete. So if you have a low density system, you have to put in a lot of other stuff. So I would encourage you just, well, one, be optimistic. Things are getting better and we're going to get where we need to go, but we need better policy. And the way you as individuals and citizens can share the message about this is to understand the basic metrics of the business. And that I would recommend
Yeah,
starting with power density. So how about that?
that's good. I agree 100%. And Robert, thanks again for joining us tonight. I know you have to be out quickly and hope that your next engagement this evening goes well as well.
Well,
Take
thank you.
care.
That's very kind, Cal. Yes, I'm married for a long time, and I want to stay married a lot longer. So I'm going to keep going here. But always pleasure to talk to you. Good luck to you.
Well, I'm with you in wanting to stay married for a long time. 38 years for me so far, and seven kids,
All right, friend.
13 grandkids, two on the way. Take care.
Attaboy. Bye.
All right. Good night. All right, folks. Thanks again for staying with us through that part of the tonight's program. Um, we are going to switch now. First off, I want to go back to my opening words about the offer that Cornwall Alliance is making this month, and that is that we have a paper, and it's a short paper. I'll acknowledge that, but that makes it all the easier to read. But it's an extremely informative paper. The utter inadequacy of solar to power a modern economy is how we've referred to it. And this is just a really outstanding paper. You know, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. So goes the old saying. And it's as true today as ever. Well, unfortunately, many marvels of modern technology have led some people to think that there just are no limits to what we can achieve if we put our minds to it. One popular myth today is that we can power whole modern economies with solar energy. Now, leave aside the problem of solar's intermittency. Solar panels generate no power at night and little or none in cloudy weather. Leave aside the problem of solar's low energy and power density, what Robert Bryce was just talking about a minute ago, which requires covering a large area with panels to generate a comparatively small amount of electricity while using vast amounts of material resources, various rare earth and other metals from around the world that not only do we have to use millions, billions of tons of those, but we have to move many millions more tons to get at them, and that's just a huge problem as well. But leave aside the problem that it's of littler value for transport, since solar panel space available on a vehicle so limits power generation as to keep load capacity very low. All those considerations aside, two others rear their heads: the total land needed and the immense amounts of earth that must be mined to obtain the raw materials needed. In how many square kilometers of solar panels in Spain and how much battery backup would it take to power Germany? The article that we're offering this week, this month, doctors Lars Chernikau and William H. Smith do the necessary analysis to tell us. Using Germany as a model case, they explain precisely why solar cannot meet the power needs of any modern economy without gravely harming other neighboring economies. And the more economies we try to power by solar, the more harm we'll have to do. Ultimately, there simply isn't enough land, and there simply aren't enough raw materials that can be economically mined to do the job. So the Cornwall Alliance is grateful to authors Chernikau and Smith for their permission to print and distribute their paper. We hope you'll learn from it. And then, this is crucial, We hope you'll share it with many other people, especially elected officials. It's time for our representatives in government to understand these things, and few things can more effectively help them do so than for their constituents to contact them and pass on lessons like these. So, to request your 100% free copy of The Utter Inadequacy of Solar to Power a Modern Economy, simply go to cornwallalliance.org. That's cornwallalliance.org. Click on the donate button. And as you fill out the donation form, when you come to the comments field, write in promo code 22 04. That's promo code 22 04, or simply the title, um, pardon me again, the utter inadequacy. If you just write that much, we'll know what you're requesting. Um, so your entire donation, by the way, then will be tax deductible, 100% of it, and we'll send you this for free. Now, a special announcement. Shortly after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, when governments shut down many public gatherings, we began doing live streams on Facebook to reach people we couldn't reach otherwise. Many of you have become regular viewers, and we're grateful. We've had some tremendous guests: scientists, economists, politicians, theologians, philosophers, pastors, pro life leaders, and plenty of others. We've done about 100 programs. We've had a lot of fun. We've covered a tremendous range of subjects related to biblical earth stewardship, economic development for the poor, and the Christian faith. Now, it's time for a new chapter. Beginning this month, the Cornwall Alliance is changing from live streaming to podcasting. You can hear the trailer for our new podcast, Created to Reign, on Spotify and Stitcher, and soon on other podcast platforms. On Created to Reign, Dr. David Legates, who is our Director of Research and Education, a recently retired professor of climatology at the University of Delaware, and experts in science, economics, theology, ethics, and public policy will join David and me to help people to think biblically about creation care, global warming, the world's poor. Our first episode should go live in the next few days, and we'll aim to post one every week after that. You'll be able to use your podcast app on your mobile, tablet, laptop, or desktop to listen whenever and wherever you please. Here is a quick opportunity. I'm hoping that our producer has the trailer for Created to Reign ready for us to hear. Is that correct? Oops. Got Robert Bryce's name in front of my person. There we go. Hello, I'm Dr. E. Calvin Beisner.
And I'm Dr. David Legates, and you're listening to Created to Reign, a production of the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation.
On this podcast, you'll hear from experts in science, economics, theology, ethics, and public policy, striving to think biblically about creation care, global warming, and the world's poor.
Amid a million competing narratives, we'll work to untangle facts from fear, to promote the welfare of all humans who were created in God's image.
We'll sift through headlines and contextualize initiatives in the green movement.
And we'll look at trends in academia and politics, testing ideas about the earth and the developing world.
Join us as we discuss how to fulfill the creation mandate to reign over the earth and promote the welfare of mankind. So that's what's ahead for us. You can find Created to Reign on Spotify and Stitcher, and we'll be getting it onto various other podcast platforms as time goes on. This is, I think, going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of different guests, and I'm eager for you to be able to take advantage of this. Meanwhile, thank you again for joining us tonight, and for many of you, many different nights, Tuesday nights, on From the Stacks. Thank you for being a part of our last program on here of From the Stacks, at least a last regular program. We are considering doing an occasional one. In order for you to know when those come up, please be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter. Just go to cornwallalliance.org, cornwallalliance.org, and you'll find very quickly a spot to sign up for our regular updates. All you need to do is provide your email address, and there's no fee. We don't dun you for money all the time. We do, of course, ask for support because we're a nonprofit organization supported entirely by the voluntary donations of individuals like you. So, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you and God bless. We look forward to connecting again on Created to Reign.